Now, this chapter begins with Tom Bauer telling about how all the internet was kind of up in arms about Harry and Meghan. Like, we were coming to a point now where it was like, those people are a couple of snakes. The Oprah interview didn't do them any favors. I mean, I think that they did them some favors for like 5 seconds. And then people were like, yeah, but you know what? They're like a prince and a duchess. What are they crying about? You know, people just did not have any patience for them. So at that time, some of the stuff that was coming up in the, I wouldn't even say it was the media. It was just all online gossipy, like social media trash. It was like in the comments. But in the comments, people were saying things like how Meghan had insulted Tyler Perry's staff and the Sussexes had left his house after an argument. Meghan was cursing that Harry spent too much time with Brits living in Los Angeles. George Lucas, the film director and a neighbor in Montecito, was irritated by the Sussexes. People were gossiping about how Meghan wrote on stationery embossed with a gold M under a golden crown. Some people wanted to talk about how Netflix and Spotify were dissatisfied by the Sussexes' lack of product. Archie was never seen playing with the local children. Yeah, that's weird. And Harry was seen every morning smoking weed in his garden. Richard Minyards, a former journalist living near Montecito, gave the London Evening Standard the opposite report. He said the Sussexes were happily integrated into the neighborhood. You know, there's always going to be that one person who's like, what can I get out of it by saying something nice? You know, so of course Richard wanted to let everybody know they're really great. Tom Bauer says that it's vicious gossip. Well, it is gossipy, but I mean, it is also true. Where is Archie? We never see him. You know, the Netflix and Spotify, they have been dissatisfied with the product. You know, they paid for something and where is it? You know, so I mean, gossip, but like gossip kind of makes you feel like it's just people coming up with stuff. No, I mean, this is true stuff. She did use stationery embossed with a gold M under a golden crown. Like, that is true. She did do that. So, I mean, perhaps it is, I mean, I guess it's gossipy to keep on and on. I mean, what difference does it make to us if Tyler Perry ran them out on a rail? But it is interesting, and I wouldn't say it's untrue. But they didn't really care. I mean, the Sussexes are like, you know, their whole world has been to silence the trolls, but only because they didn't have something bigger and better to focus their energy on. Now that they are like making deals hand over fist, you know, yeah, the trolls are annoying, but like they'll have the final word, kind of is how they're thinking now. The Sussex had good reason to ignore the trolls. Their astute team was completing the jigsaw to establish them as major players in America. Their deadline is 3 months away. Negotiations were nearly completed to sign a 4-book deal. Oh, you guys, I had no idea it was a 4-book deal. Who's writing these 4 books? It can't be, you know, illiterate Meghan, who, you guys, we're going to talk about that book, The Bench, she wrote, that little children's book. Oh my gosh. It's like the worst thing I've ever seen, like literally. And I'm really choosy about kids' books. I mean, not much makes the cut for my kids, but this is like one of the worst things I've ever seen. Just on like on a level of literacy, like these poems, June, moon, soon, tune. It's like, what is this? Who told her this was okay? Anyway, they've got a 4-book deal. Okay, but we've seen what Harry was able to come up with a ghostwriter, and they think they're going to churn out 3 more of these things. Like, what are they going to do? What are they even going to talk about? What more can they reveal? I don't know. Okay, so the first title, to be published in late 2022, Don't We Know It, was to be Harry's intimate and heartfelt memoir. Ghostwritten by the American journalist J.R. Moehringer, Harry's book promised to deliver an accurate, and wholly truthful, definitive account about the losses and the life lessons that have helped to shape him. To earn the estimated advance of about £20 million, Harry would be expected to give Moehringer emotional confessions and secret details. We got secret details, all right. Okay. I think this is the most pertinent thing, though, that we've heard, because Bauer goes on to say that these were to settle his scores with his family and friends, but that Meghan was expected to help the ghostwriter understand the pain inflicted by the royal family and on herself and Harry. Yeah, it's so obvious that Meghan was the one like keeping the appointments with the old ghostwriter, and that Now, I've heard repeatedly that the ghostwriter quit. I never really looked into that much. Like, I didn't need, regardless of who was working on it, ghostwriter, Meghan, Harry, the book was a piece of trash. Okay? And if you haven't gone back to listen to the extended review I did of that book, go do yourself a favor. Because that book was so much garbage. It defied anything that I had expected. Like, I did not have high standards going into that book. I mean, I was like, it's going to be some garbage. But, like, he got some help, right? When I think about how stupid that book was, I can't even believe I read the whole thing and talked about it for like 30 episodes. Anyway, okay, yeah, they wrote a book all right. I can't even imagine how they think they got through more of them. I can't even imagine, like, what further details can you give us? You gonna talk about, like, you know, one time you and William were sitting around and then the nanny gave you a snack and William got a couple more crackers than you did? I mean, like, what is left to say, you know? If he writes another book, I guarantee you he's going to play on, like, he and Diana. So, like, the next book, I'll bet you anything, is going to be like, my special relationship with my mom. And I'm like, but you didn't really know her because you were like 11 when she died and she never spent any time with you anyway. So what are you talking about? But I guarantee you the next book's going to have something to do with Diana. Or, like, he's going to talk about, like, how Diana helped him his whole life, as far as, like, when he was a kid, their super close relationship, and how, like, him and his mom really got something special that he and William never had, and that, like, now that he's gone into adulthood, she's not there, but she is there, and these are all the ways that he's known that she's there. And it'll be a lot of him, like, talking about how animals have been talking to him, you know, the birds twittered in a certain way, and he knew it was mama, like, because we got a lot of that in Spare. But I guarantee you the next book's going to play on Diana. It's the only thing he has that anybody even gives any care about whatsoever. He only has one thing he can say. He walked behind her coffin. You know, I mean, we've heard that so many times. But his next book will be about Diana. I can guarantee it. And, I mean, I would bet, like, a ton of money on it. Bauer goes on to discuss the book. He said among the targets besides William, Kate, and Charles would be, of course, Camilla. Meghan had identified her as a racist. Publication was sensitively timed for after the end of the celebrations of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in June. By definition, Harry excluded describing the advantages bestowed on himself. By any count, Harry was one of the most privileged men. The further threat was the announcement of his second book, which would be published after the Queen's death. Well, where is it, Harry? She's not with us anymore. We'd like to see the second one. The announcement of Harry's deal coincided with the publication of Meghan's illustrated children's book, The Bench. Oh, you guys. So I went and I looked up The Bench, right? I never read that sorry thing. Who would? There's just so much trash out there for kids. Quite frankly, if a book has been written before 1965, I really do consider whether I should or should not read it to my children, because usually it's we drivel in trash. But this particular book exceeded even my low expectations for garbage. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I already was not expecting it to be great. You know, the illustrations were less than beautiful. I mean, it's just like a bunch of watercolor that could have been done by, like, a skilled 6th grader. And even that, I'm not even sure. But I mean, even aside from the illustrations, all right, at least they were watercolor and not done by a computer. I have, like, extreme issues with children's books where the illustrations are, like, trash, because for children, part of the joy of looking at a book, especially before they're literate, is the beautiful illustrations. And if I'm trying to teach my child about what is good, true, and beautiful, giving them a book that has been illustrated by a computer, where's the skill? Like, what is there for them to attain to as they look at these clunky pictures? But anyway, at least she did have a watercolorist do her paintings for her in the book. But all that aside, the actual content of this book was so lame. All right, she writes this book, right? She anticipates that it's going to be the sensational bestseller. It's 34 pages, but it's like a line a page, you know, so it's not too in depth. And it was all inspired by a poem she wrote for Harry on Father's Day after Archie was born. So the dedication line wrote, "For the man and boy who make my heart go pump, pump." What? That's embarrassing. And she wrote about the inspiration about this book. She wanted to depict the special bond through an inclusive lens. In particular, she wanted to highlight the softness of masculinity and fatherhood through the warmth and joy and comfort of the relationship between fathers and sons. I mean, ignore the fact that she and Harry don't have a relationship with their dads, but they know all about what good parents are, and the special bond between fathers and sons, or fathers and daughters, if you want to talk inclusivity. And so the whole book is like a bunch of pictures of like dads and their sons and everything like that. And it's, it'd be a fine idea, but the whole book is like based on like, this is the bench where you will sit and watch him as he grows. And, this is the bench where you guys are going to like take naps out in the sun. And this is the bench where you'll kiss his like boo-boos and his owies when he's sad. This is the bench where I'll see you playing with him while I look out the kitchen window, tears of joy streaming down my face. But she sets it all to rhyme. I meant to have like a copy of it. If you want to like put a bullet through your head, go read it. But it's terrible. And I can't even believe anybody was like, yeah, this is great. You don't need any help with this. It is horrific. It is total failure as a children's book. I mean, that's pretty much all I can say there. I feel like the reason she wrote it was as yet another middle finger to both her father and Charles, so that she could essentially be saying, you guys failed us, but despite your failures, we can identify what good fathering is, and this is actually what it looks like, sitting on a bench and, being there for your kid. Sitting on the bench and watching them play at the playground, sitting on the bench and eating a snack, sitting on the bench and taking a nap, sitting on the bench and being a comfort to them when they hurt themselves. That is true fatherhood. Now, we didn't get it from you guys. I mean, you didn't help Harry figure it out. My dad certainly didn't help me figure it out, but we prevailed in our maturity. So much so that I can now write a book. We didn't need you after all. We don't need you now. The critics were harsh, weren't they ever? This is hilarious. Meghan was too controversial to attract generosity. The Daily Telegraph commented that her semi-literate book leaves Harry holding the baby. Yeah, that is it's so weird. Like all the illustrations, she's kind of like in the background. She's like gardening while Harry's helping her, like Archie feed the chickens. There's a picture of like a mom weeping at a window while she watches the reuniting of her soldier husband with the young child. He's like come back from war or something. And it's like, why are you never like in it though? And it's just like, I know the book is supposed to be like from her point of view as she looks on, but the whole book kind of seems like she's letting the father take all the responsibility of childhood. Somehow she fails to make it seem as though they're parenting together, but she's watching him. The whole book feels like he's doing all the work, and then she's like almost like this ghostly figure in the background, like watching as it all happens. It's odd. It's a strange book. Another complained that the semi-literate vanity project limps along. It does, y'all. Others questioned the book's remarkable similarity to The Boy on the Bench, published in 2018. Ranked 4,934 on Britain's Amazon after 2 weeks, The Bench did reach the top 2,000 in America. Within days, the bad reviews were unimportant because Meghan had successfully executed 2 other appearances. And we will talk about those 2 other appearances. I do want to say one thing, though. I was really interested by this statement where it said, others questioned the book's remarkable similarity to The Boy on the Bench, published in 2018. Actually, Bauer misquotes the title. He says The Boy and the Bench. That's not the title of the book. And when I went to go and look up and see what that book was about, I wouldn't really say they were similar at all. The Boy on the Bench is about a boy sitting at a playground with his dad, and then he's too nervous to go play with the other kids in this packed playground, and then he sees somebody in distress, they've lost a toy, he goes to help. And I think like the dad encourages him to do it. Well, I mean, there's a bench and there's a dad, but I wouldn't say it was like plagiarism. And so, it's like, I want to just be so careful with things like that, because now that is gossipy, to be like, oh, she plagiarized this book. I mean, maybe she did read the book about the dad on the bench or whatever, but I mean, dads sit on benches all the time at the playground or out in the garden or whatever. It's not like exactly plagiarism. And there's just enough to criticize Meghan about that I think that you don't want to ever lose the edge of the criticism by throwing in false allegations, because then that muddles it makes things murky as to where your specific points of critique should land. So I wish he hadn't included that, because it's not really worth saying. But anyway, be that as it may be, the book on its own merit was terrible, and we don't even have to criticize it because it could have been plagiarized. It wasn't, in my estimation. I don't think it's plagiarized. I just think it was a piece of trash.